Finally, ESPN has decided that the year 2024 actually did exist. So often this season, whether it was the draft, All-Star game, so often they were comparing this year's numbers to 2023's numbers. Oh my gosh, but it's up if you compare it to 2 years ago. Well, it's down if you compare it to last year. A constant back and forth that we had with ESPN all season long. And you know what? Finally, we did it, folks. We did it. Yes, give yourselves a round of applause. ESPN has finally understood that they can't dance around this anymore. Just hold the L with 2024 and then just compare it to accept your L and then go and say all the positive things that you want to say after. No shame in that. No shame.
ESPN just admitted what they've been hiding for months. After a full season of selective reporting, cherry-picked comparisons, and mysteriously delayed numbers, they finally released the complete WNBA Finals ratings. And the results aren't just bad. They expose an entire narrative collapse happening in real time. Here's what makes this absolutely wild. Nielsen upgraded their measurement system this year. They added smart TVs, set-top boxes, and expanded out-of-home viewing to 100% of markets. Every single change designed to boost ratings. That means the 2025 finals had every possible advantage baked in, and they still couldn't outperform 2024, but that's not even the most revealing part. Throughout the season, ESPN ran a shell game with viewership data. They compared 2025 numbers to 2023, conveniently skipping over last year's Caitlin Clark explosion. And when that didn't work, they'd release one game's numbers while ignoring the rest, or include NBA TV stats but hide ABC broadcasts.
Last year they put it all out. This year, very selective on the certain numbers that they made available to the public. We have to wait for ESPN to report it now. We have to wait for these networks to report it now. They don't give it to sports media anymore. They don't give it to TV ratings guy. They don't give it to any of these other programs anymore. Now they just gonna keep it close to the vest, sit behind the scenes, fluff up their numbers as much as they can, and then finally release.
Think about what he's describing. This is ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, quietly massaging its own numbers behind closed doors before releasing them to the public. No more independent verification from TV ratings analysts. No more third-party sports media getting access to the raw data. Just ESPN in a conference room figuring out how to spin a so-called 5% increase. A number that only exists because they completely changed how viewership is measured. And here's the kicker. That 5% growth is actually devastating when you understand the context. Last year's postseason used the old Nielsen methodology. This year, they added millions of previously uncounted viewing situations, smart TVs in bars, set-top boxes in hotels, and out-of-home viewing that had never been captured before. All of that new infrastructure was specifically designed to inflate the totals. And after all that, they squeezed out just 5%. If you applied this year's upgraded system to last year,
WNBA Finals averaged 1.5 million viewers, second most watched on ESPN, behind only 2024. Oh yeah. Finals are down this year. How does that look, WNBA? How does that look? Think about it, folks. How does that look? They are already trending downwards. When it comes to finals that aren't involving Caitlin Clark, the numbers are already pointing downwards. And it was a sweep. Oh, goodness. But in the WNBA's case, but guys, you had A'ja Wilson.
Listen to that frustration. He's not even trying to hide it anymore. Because here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. The WNBA just ran a massive natural experiment, and the results are conclusive. You had A'ja Wilson, the reigning MVP and face of the league, You had Breanna Stewart, one of the most decorated players in basketball history. You had veteran stars, championship pedigree, and tightly contested games. Everything the league insists drives viewership. Yet the numbers tell a different story. Game 1 of the finals opened strong with 1.9 million viewers. Then something happened that should terrify WNBA executives. 500,000 people vanished. They watched the opener and said, "I'm good." Game 2 dropped to 1.2 million. Game 3 barely recovered at 1.3 million. The Game 4 closeout hit 1.44 million data. Now compare that to last year's. Finals, Game 1, 1.0 million. Game 2, 1.34 million. Game 3, 1.4 million. Game 4, 1.7 million. Game 5, 2.2 million. Each game last year built momentum. Viewership grew. Word spread. Casual fans tuned in. The series became an event. This year, the audience shrank with every game.
You see? That's actual growth, even with the new metric system, even with the new counting system that Nielsen has implemented. 5%, not real growth. 30%, okay, I could say, okay, that's some growth right there. Because if you compare that to last year, it's still probably an increase. But if you compare the postseason using last year's ratings metrics, that's down. But we move on. Let's take a look. We have Game 1 of the 2025 finals giving you 1.9 million viewers. You have Game 2, Game 3 giving you 1.2 and 1.3, down from last year's. And then
percentages tell the whole story. Last year's finals didn't just outperform the year before, they obliterated it. Game 1 was up 57%, Game 2 jumped 115%, Game 3 rose 112%, and Game 4 climbed 88%. The series deciding Game 5? Up an astonishing 142% from the previous year's closeout. That's not normal growth. That's not a rising tide lifts all boats scenario. That's one singular phenomenon, a player-driven surge that generated unprecedented interest in a league that had been stagnant for 2 decades. Now, look at 2025. The finals averaged 1.5 million viewers. Last year averaged 1.6 million. But remember, this year's numbers include all those Nielsen upgrades designed to inflate totals. Remove those enhancements and compare apples to apples, and you're looking at a 20-25% decline minimum. That means at least 1 million viewers who watched part of last year's finals didn't tune in for even a second this year. They had the opportunity. ESPN promoted the series heavily. The games were easy to access, but those viewers made a conscious choice. Without Caitlin Clark.
That is what the Caitlin Clark effect looks like. Gotta be honest. That's what a lot of new eyeballs looks like. Gotta be honest. Peaked at 3.3 million. So we can all sit here and agree that at the bare minimum, 1 million people that saw a piece of last year's finals didn't see a single piece of this year's finals. Can we agree on that? Cool, great. Crazy work. 2025 averaged 1.5 million. Sports Media Watch comes out with an article. WNBA Finals sweep down.
This year's full Sports Media Watch report just dropped the hammer with that methodology note. In plain terms, they're saying, before you celebrate these numbers, understand they're on steroids compared to previous years. And even with that artificial boost, 2025 still lost to 2024's natural performance. Think about what that means. ESPN and the WNBA spent the entire season trying to prove that last year's explosion wasn't about one player. They wanted to show sustainable growth, to prove that new fans came for Caitlin Clark, but stayed for the league. They needed evidence that the rising tide was permanent. Instead, the finals obliterated that narrative. This wasn't a slow decline or a small dip. It was an immediate, measurable audience rejection. Game 1 curiosity turned into Game 2 apathy. The casual fans who discovered women's basketball last year took one look at a Clarkless finals and checked out. And here's why that's deeply problematic for the WNBA's future. Aja Wilson just won her third MVP. She's in her prime. The Liberty just secured back-to-back championships. The Mercury still have Diana Taurasi's legacy appeal. If these stars, these storylines, and this level of competition can't, comparison is absolutely brutal. It's like Barry Bonds on steroids still hitting fewer home runs than a clean Aaron Judge. That's exactly what happened here. The 2025 finals had every possible advantage. Expanded measurement systems, smart TV data, set-top box tracking, and 100% market coverage. And they still got outperformed by 2024's raw, unboosted numbers. But let's dig into what this really means for ESPN's investment. They just signed a massive new media rights deal with the WNBA. A deal built on the assumption that last year's surge in viewership represented lasting structural growth. ESPN was betting that the Caitlin Clark phenomenon wasn't a flash in the pan, but the start of a new era of consistent fan engagement. Now, those assumptions look shaky. The first post-Clark finals underperformed even with inflated metrics. That's a nightmare scenario for a network. That's paying premium dollars for content it expected to trend upward. Because if the Caitlin effect fades,